All right.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank Podcast. I'm here with Bradley.
Hey man, how you doing? Thanks for
I'm,
having me.
I like that. I like what you just said there. How you doing? I'm gonna ask you, how are you doing?
I'm living the dream, man. One nightmare at a time, you know?
One nightmare at a time. I've never heard that before. But how many times on the daily do you get asked how you're doing?
Too many times, especially with the day job. That's literally the opening line is, "Hey, how you doing?"
But how many
Well,
of those people that say that actually mean that?
you know, probably none of them. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest. We're all there collecting a paycheck, right? How many of us actually care? You know?
Because I work a front desk job, and it's like I know it's always good morning, and it's like good morning, and it's like how you doing. I work at a gym, so people will walk in with their headphones, and a lot of times you're saying something and they just don't respond. Honestly, I prefer that because
Yeah.
it's like even when they do respond, you actually mean it. Like how many times someone asks you, "Are you okay?" or "How are you doing?" and then you just say, "Yeah, I'm okay," and it's like no one sits there and goes, "But are you really?" Like it gets kind of
Yeah.
hard to say, "I am okay" when you're not feeling okay.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's when you're not okay, it's the hardest to admit to, right? Because you just don't want to put any burden on anybody else at the end of the day, right? Because you're not feeling good at all. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, sometimes you just sit there and you go, you know, today I'm just going to keep this to myself. But most days you're kind of like searching for that real, like, who's going to really ask you if you're okay? Who's really going to ask you, how are you actually doing today? And have a conversation with you about it. You know what I mean?
I mean, it gets difficult, man, to sort through the positivity and then who's being real and who's being fake. I mean, if you open up to
Yeah.
someone, you might open up to the wrong person, and next thing you know, they're going to use it against you later or something like that.
I mean, it's as a podcaster, you should know that anything we say or do is kind of out there on the public and can be used against us in a positive or negative light. Somebody just may not like us and choose to use, the words we say in a negative way and to do negative things. I mean, those things exist too, unfortunately, especially when it's as easy as being behind a computer, right?
Yeah, it's just difficult, especially like I do a conversation style thing. So like if I invite somebody on,
Yeah.
probably like you got the message was like, what does this kid want? What did I say? What is this kid want? And I'm like, no, I legit just want to shoot the shit, see what gets people energized and stuff. Because I think you
Yeah.
probably know about it too. Yeah, talking about mental health, for instance, is one topic I think that is just that triggers me always because of how it's been mismanaged for so long.
Dude,
Especially like if you
yes.
want to talk about $850 million that Balasio's wife just lost, that was given to the mental health fund, and she's like, I don't know where it went. And I'm like, there, the government tosses money
I
at
know
you.
where it went.
Yeah, up the
I know
nose,
where it went.
or the brand new Lexus they got.
Yeah, something.
But it's like the people that are starting these organizations that are doing these types of things to be able to actually help people that actually need it don't have the funding, and then when the funding does get tossed out, it gets set into the wrong hands. And I think
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about mental health, it's an issue for sure. I mean, I think everyone suffers from it. I mean, you're lucky if you don't have it so bad to the point where you're like sticking a gun in your mouth or anything,
Yeah.
but it becomes an issue when the money that gets funded to these things doesn't really hit those people. It's very, very hard because whenever money's involved, you lose track of the main essence of why you even started the corporation in the first place. I mean, we have so many corporations in place, and this is where I might go off on a little bit of a tangent.
Go for
You
it.
see, like, oh, they put $900 billion into this. And you're like, well, where'd that money go? If it's not doing anything to help the people, it's like, what do you think? That's political corruption. That's always what everyone says. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, let's start getting organizations and let's start getting a big movement out here. My issue is though, there are some people that will use mental health as a crutch. They will walk around and say, are you saying that to me because I have mental health? It's like, what? I just asked if you wanted eggs or bacon. Like, what?
Some
But
people do. Absolutely.
it's and it, see that's when I get a little bit upset because if you know what that's like, if you know what the pain is, I think everyone experiences good and bad days. There's ebbs and flows. We have our good moments and our bad moments, but there's this really, really dramatic impact at the fact that something is accelerating it, we're throwing money to try and fix the problems. Like Japan established like these people that will come to your door that will talk to you about suicide and say like, hey, like, you know, like, don't do it. It's a horrible thing. Just like we have helplines. But it's like, I get it. That's to fix the issue, but it's not stopping, it's increasing. So that means there's another step that we're missing here. What would that step be? My main point would probably be social media, just the way that you're giving a bunch of people, like you said, you know, a screen to hide behind, and that probably wouldn't say this to you in a bar.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, mental health. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, man. Mental health.
That's why I said we let's start a little early so I can get it going.
Yeah. Like mental health. I mean, you're right. Like there are absolutely some people that use it as a crutch, as an excuse for not changing anything about themselves to improve that very mental issue that they deal with. Right. And we oftentimes are kind of told that that's okay to do, especially in this society. Right. You can just push it off. You know, you don't have to focus on it at all. Or actually, some people fucking kind of ignore it. They believe that it doesn't affect them at all. And it's like you really have to look deep down inside to find out whether or not it actually impacts you or not. And your reactions to certain things, especially social media, kind of dictate that. That can be hidden, you know, mental health problems that you don't know what's going on too. You know, like, why are you so triggered by an individual that is sitting behind, you know, a computer talking shit that has nothing to do with you, your life, and knows nothing about you except for what you share on your public, you know, profile. Right?
Why did I see a education professor tweet something and she was like, this one think, she said, this one thing always gets me upset. And I just commented, thing, you mean thing, right? And I don't know why, but then I just deleted it. I was like, why did I even feel the need to do that? I think it was because they were an education, like master degree, like
right.
I'm like, hold on a second. Autocorrect kind of screwed it because they were also bitching about somebody else. So I was like, hang on, you just disabled your whole thing. But I mean, see, I went to school for psychology, a couple of classes. I'm not a master's or professor, but I like the human mind because I like to see what gets a person there. I believe everyone is probably redeemable. There's just how much effort are you willing to find out what that person's redeemable in? And it seems like in today's society, we do a lot of showboating about like, pro mental health, pro this, pro that. I'm like, but what the fuck's being done? Like, I don't see
exactly.
I see the money going into it, but I don't see any like productive programming's going on. I watched yesterday, or actually last night, a documentary, which is one area of mental health I am super fascinated with, is schizophrenia. I have had a couple people close to me take their own lives because they were schizophrenic. So that's just something for me where I'm like, why is this something that we don't have a cure for? The longest time was ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, which is you shock someone so it wouldn't occur. But I'm watching this, and it's a 23-year-old kid my age that has schizophrenia, and it started when he was 20, and his mom's like, yeah, he's not himself anymore, and all we do is we give him a pill, but since there's no cure, they keep upping the dosage, and I'm like, to think, and there was a commercial that happened a long time ago, probably like 5-6 years ago, but it's a lady talking on her cell phone, and it's a medication for schizophrenia, and she's talking on a cell phone, and there's a guy handing an ice cream to a child. And I don't know if you know a whole lot about schizophrenia.
I know a little bit about it, but keep talking, obviously.
This is the best, like, a commercial. It's so scary. That's the thing, is that the guy's handing the little girl the ice cream, and the lady's on the cell phone, and she looks over, and the guy's now taking pictures of the woman on the cell phone that has schizophrenia, and just taking pictures of her, like, over and over and over again. She's like shakes her head and blinks a couple of times, and the guy's back to giving the little girl the ice cream. And schizophrenia is like, you think everything's out to get you. I mean, I've heard accounts of like a 12-year-old that burned his whole entire house down with his family inside. They luckily escaped because he thought King Tut was trying to kill him, the Egyptian pharaoh. And you're like, okay, that there might be a small percentage of the population that might have this certain thing, but there's 3 million Americans that have schizophrenia. So why is this occurring? What's happening? Is it some type of genetic thing, or is it just something that strikes a nerve? And that's the issue with mental health, is you don't know what could be the aggressor. You don't know what could be this, but the issue is we're also not trying to find out what that is. We have therapies that you can go to, but a lot of people that you probably know don't really want to express the issue of what they have. You know, it's hard to talk to someone and be so open about it without looking like you're insane.
Oh, absolutely. Because I don't know how many times I'd have a conversation with a therapist, and as I'm talking, I'm like, am I really saying the bullshit coming out of my mouth? Right. And immediately go like, now I don't want to really talk about it anymore. Right. Because I'm hearing myself, you know what I mean? And I'm like, God, do I sound like this or I sound like that? And sometimes that's not going to solve your problem. Talking about it is not always going to be the solution. Either is medication. The solution, though, I think, at the end of the day, and I think this is where you're getting, is what's the root cause? Like what is the root cause and how do we attack that instead of consistently putting a band-aid on it, throwing money at a problem that we don't see any result? Or the best is, let's continue to keep throwing money at it and give it to an incompetent government, because that's really what it is, and say that, oh, it's going to change, but it never will change, right? It's just continued incompetence, right? That's the biggest problem, I think, is people keep trying to do the same things over and over again, expecting a different result without actually addressing what the main root problem is.
I definitely think also if we look at like false identities nowadays, I think during the pandemic, I always asked this question. And I mean, we're kind of out of it, I would say now. At least my town, they were like, no masks. And let me tell
Dude,
you,
I'm in Florida. So
all right, you know, you feel me on this. And
I feel you.
here's the thing is where it comes to everyone, like I've talked to many people from Florida and they're like, it's not that what they're saying it is down here. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not at all. And it's crazy how like everyone wants to pick one thing to be the blame. We want to push blame onto something else or put the attention that's bad on someone else, but we all want the good attention. We don't want the bad one, which is why I say the world's like social media, all these conspiracy theories, everything that goes on. It's yes, it can get you down some rabbit holes and it can kill some time for sure. But we're living in an era of schizophrenia because nobody understands. Like we're always
paranoia. Is what it is too. Yeah.
Well, that's what schizophrenia is, paranoia.
Exactly.
That's the issue, is that no one knows who to trust. We don't know who to go to. We don't know who is actually our friend, who's not, who's going to stab us in the back, who's going to do this. It's hard to find genuine authenticity. And the amount of everything that people are trying to become something in life. Everyone wants to make a mark for themselves. And all of that is saying you need to do this, you need to be doing that, and then showing you all these people that are doing these types of things where you're trying to, and it seems like you're not making a mark. And that's when you have like you start to wonder, who are you? And I was like asking during the pandemic, did you find yourself? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, did you look inside of yourself to be like, I don't want to fucking work building IKEA furniture all day. I want to fucking churn butter. And I'm like, go for it, man. Like, be happy.
Yeah, go churn butter then. Yeah. Shit. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, kind of what you mentioned about schizophrenia and hyperparanoia and how they're like connected. Like, of course, you know, I'm not thinking about schizophrenia. I'm thinking about the hyperparanoia and seeing it and you making that connection. And it's almost like it asks the real question of, is there only 3 million people that deal with schizophrenia, or how many more they're hiding with it, suffering from it? And how many more are we creating? How does a 23-year-old suffer like that? You know what I mean? And I personally have had people I love myself deal with lots of mental health issues. And I know medication helps people, and I know it does. But some of these folks that I know, and I'm sure you do, seem like they've been taken for a ride since the beginning to now. And the medication's just increased. They've just added, and it's like, who really are you now? You know, you're literally full of chemicals all the time to get you to your point. Of course, it seems like you don't know who you are at the end of any of this stuff, right? You're chemically induced with things that people think you need, right? And then when it's not there or it doesn't work anymore, you're miserable. You're really wondering, what the fuck's going on? Who am I? What am I? And I've had the same experience when I was on antidepressants. I took it for years and I had a real hard time loving myself on it. You know what I mean? As well. And I think ever since I've been off of it, since like June of last year with the pandemic going on and everything, It's been the best thing for me. Like you mentioned, what are you doing during the pandemic? What have you done to change anything about yourself? Well, for me personally, just being able to talk about my struggles openly in a podcast, which is why I started a podcast, and doing things personally, like I do Muay Thai, things like that, right? Intense workouts, more reading, more things that I like to do. And the other thing about it is my laziness factor. Like I'm super lazy. And I find that if I give into that laziness a lot, I'm more unhappy by the end of it than I am if I just say, fuck it, go work out for an hour and then come back and be lazy, right? There's that gratification. Yeah. And I think today we look for that instant gratification, and you can get it by going online and talking shit and getting like 50 likes. You know what I'm saying? Because you had a point, or like you mentioned, like you went on Twitter and just changed it to thing, right? Like that probably would have gotten a lot of reaction, right?
But I deleted
But you get in a right. But the other point to that I would say is like this real highly educated individual, you're right, made a mistake. And you were like, all right, I want to make sure that like this highly educated individual, knows that this like, dumbass on the other end, not calling you a dumbass, but that's the way I would look at it. This dumbass like over here can, correct this person. Right. But I look at it at this one mistake, one grammatical error, right? Isn't like, what defines an individual, but yet so many people do, right? Like they see these mistakes and they pounce on it and boom, you're defined by these mistakes the rest of your life. And that's the other shameful part about it. It's like, what the fuck happened to you're more than just a day, a conversation, and an opinion? What happened to those days? You're on mute, dude.
I'll say the best example I can get. I do that because, like, all right, because a long time ago when I was doing this podcast, if I vaped, someone would be like, "I can hear you fucking vape." So I'm like, all right, and I figured muting it, and sometimes I forget.
But I got a dog, so I get
you. You had me laugh because I was thinking, I deleted the tweet because I immediately thought, like, what am I gonna, was this gonna be a Twitter battle all fucking day with some person that's like they weren't higher up on me in followers, which I consider followers your own cult. Like you got a bunch of people that are like following you, and just some of them, that want to interact with you because they like you. And some of them just want to watch when something slips up. It's the same thing. That's why I say we're living.
I haven't gotten there yet.
Well, we're living in like a little bit. I mean, maybe with your personal, for instance, like I think we all know the one dude from school that I'll accept it. And then you accept it. And they don't like any of your posts, but they're just watching you, just checking. Like I have an ex that does that. Just fucking. I see you looking at my stories, but hey, doesn't like a post. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's we live in this like, and I think it is a problem with social media. I think you can get addicted to it because I don't think anybody really realizes how much we rely on it until we don't have it. Like when the internet goes down, we're all like, what the fuck do we do?
Yeah. What do I do with my time?
Masturbate a couple of times, I guess, but you can only do that so much before it starts to hurt.
Yeah, man. You can only rub it raw so many times. What?
But I remember I've been doing this probably on the daily, at least on my days off, is I just sit in the back porch, like with a beach chair, have headphones in, and just sunbathe, like take a little bit of sun in. Just that little bit of stuff, dude. Like it makes you feel a lot better too. I mean, it's probably fun to sit inside your house and watch Family Guy instead of being out in the sun. But if you can really just like take a minute to do so, it goes by so quick and it's really so energetic for you. I mean, we see way too many people that are driving and just flicking off people and screaming at them rather than people that are just enjoying life, like have the windows down, their hand out the window. Someone used to tell you, well, be careful, you can get your arm cut off that way. It's like, we're in the middle of an open field, the windows down, got the AC on. Oh my God, talk about heaven.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite things, I'm originally from Chicago. So one of my favorite things of going up there when I was in high school, see some friends, and it would be like 40, 50 degrees, and we'd have the heat blaring and all the windows down, right? So you got that cold air coming in, but that heat blaring from the car, and you're just like, whoa, living the dream, And then down here, it's the opposite, right? It's the AC windows down and the heat going sometimes, man.
I don't know why it's so satisfying when that happens.
So satisfying.
It's the craziest thing, but I think like for my ideas, like we have all these buildings now that are not really being used, since now a lot of people and companies started realizing working from home is like pretty freaking easy compared to driving
Yeah.
10 miles or taking that commute into work. Why don't we
Yes.
tear some of them down and just build art or build some type of installation that's more of like a positive thing? You know, people want to see something that isn't the same thing right beside it, right beside it, right beside it. They want to see
Oh my
something
God.
new.
Yeah. Buildings with windows, that basically house, freaking average, boring ass lives, right? Where 9 hours a day, that individual, when they're not on their phone and on Zoom and on their computer, are looking at their phone, looking for an escape, basically through their phone,
They want
right?
entertainment.
Yeah, but then they go and look at these influencers and these other people that are living their lives the way that they really want to live their lives. And they're sitting there like, what the fuck am I doing wrong? Right? Like that's also not helping anybody's mental health, you know? And I have that same problem. I have a job just like that. We're about to get shoved right back into the office, I'm about to go and do that commute again. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't know if I want to do that anymore. But what I didn't do was nothing. Right? I did something different for once. I used to say that all the time. Like, I can't just keep talking shit and not actually do it, not put anything to action, just like that. I'm sure your podcast probably came about because of that same conversation with yourself. Do I want to do this shit forever? Do I, or do I want to do something better that gives me more freedom down the road, And at the end of the day, that's always the answer. Freedom, something that you prefer to be doing rather than what somebody else wants you to be doing or what somebody tells you to be doing. Because that was my entire life. Go down this path. It'll be comfortable. It'll be nice. It'll be all this. You'll be happy. It's not true at all. It's bullshit. That's fucking bullshit. Right. And if you're sitting there feeling down because you're looking at all these people on Instagram and they're doing things that you wish you could be doing, you could be doing those things, but you're spending more time on your phone, envious or feeling shitty about yourself. You got to turn that around. And that's the whole mental health thing that I think you talk about too. Like there's a give and take. Like at some level, you have to understand that a lot of this is on you, to do.
You'd be surprised with the era and this new age of communication that we're actually communicating a hell of a lot less, and like the way that it actually
Yeah.
matters when it comes to just hanging out, meeting your friends. And actually, like when you talk about a problem, for instance, when you bitch about it and put a Facebook post up, you get a like, you get 2 likes, but you get a way better feeling when you talk to a friend and they're actually able to console you and have an energy exchange, when they're able to communicate
Yes.
their problems with you. I mean, I definitely thought a couple of times he's doing with this podcast, like maybe I should end it here, maybe I should end it here, but I'm having way too much like knowledge I'm getting from it, at least experiences and perspectives has changed my life,
Fun
I would say.
too.
Yeah. But people start them thinking it's going to be this thing that's going to get a paid show and it's going to get this. I'm like, you got to do it because you love it or you want to do it, or you're not going to have fun with it at all. And then it's just going to be a
Right.
job and it's going to bore you. This podcast started over a failed suicide attempt.
Damn,
Not
man.
not my own, but
Oh, well, that's good to hear, but
yeah.
still shitty.
But I
But
actually had him on the podcast to talk about it. I've mentioned it a few times. His name's Brooks, but really good dude. Like we ate lunch together in school. That was it for like 30 minutes a day for like, and I hadn't seen him for like 5 years when we graduated. Then I just get a random
wow.
call on my cell phone. I guess one day we exchanged numbers and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, hello. He's like, hey man, I'm on my roof right now. And I'm like, he's like contemplating life, like, because he was adopted, he found out. And then he thought
Yeah.
like every decision he's ever made was his parents, not his. And he's having this major life, like decision crisis type scenario. And
Right.
I just go like, why'd you call me? And he goes, I just knew in school, like you were a good person. Like you actually, when you asked me how my day was going, you meant it. I'm like, why would I ask if I didn't give a shit? Like that's an open
Exactly.
invitation for someone to just lay their shit out on you that you probably fucking hate. And I'm like,
Yeah.
look, man, I'm not a good person. I'm not a bad person. I'm just me. And I'm just out here trying to be a person just like everybody else. And that's what gets me is when I see people that act like they're higher up or act like they're better than someone. That's why I don't really talk to celebrities. I don't go and try and get famous guests for my podcast because I have funner conversations with people that don't have that whole, like, you got to go through my booking manager. I'm like, fucking tell your booking manager to fuck off. Like, I want to talk to the actual person. I want to be able to have this exchange where we don't feel like we're going to a job or something. I know time that goes by, like maybe like watching paint dry. And then I know time that goes by like that because you're fucking getting into it. You're having an energy exchange. And you're just talking about life. Bigfoot, aliens. Fuck it. I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I love all that shit. Yeah, no, that's exactly it, man. That's exactly it. I mean, I started the podcast. Like, I've started podcasts before, right? But I started the podcast on the mental health thing in September. And it is not like something that's blowing up. Like, and that's not to be disparaging at all, because that's not the intent. The intent was always about talking about my struggles. And if anybody at all got something out of it that helped them improve, so be it. But I just liked doing it. I liked recording conversations, liked meeting strangers like yourself, you know, and just shooting the shit. Didn't have to have a huge following, right? That's the one thing that I think people, like, I have a lot of friends that are now like suggesting guests and all this, which is awesome. But they're always like, yeah, they got a good following. They got this and that. And I'm like, I'm not really interested in that. I'm really interested in the story that they have to tell. And in some ways you could say, if you're looking at the podcast, you know, if you're looking at it numbers and you're looking at the way, like you mentioned, if you're looking at it to blow up, that's not what's happening. But that's okay. Because like you mentioned, this is a love thing. Like, those things do happen when it's genuine. And that's the way I feel about it. You know, I don't have a huge social media following. I don't have a huge audience. None of that does not matter. I still wake up and record because 1, 20, 50, 100 people, it helps. And I know for a fact that there's been more than one person that has gotten help out of my podcast. And that's the way I look at it. And because of that, got to keep going. You know what I mean? Not only that, it's fucking amazing for me, you know, at the end of the day, to have a platform that isn't Facebook to talk. Right.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Think about it though. Just think about what you just said about, imagine, is the dream to have $1 billion? Maybe. But imagine the fact that you saved someone's life or someone that got help from something that you created. And I'm like, I had the weirdest thing happen. I had a guest on here. He's been on twice. He was on the first time. And then after like months of hearing nothing from him, he comes back on. We're talking, like, I'm like, what happened? He's like, dude, your podcast saved my life. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, my wife looked at the
awesome.
podcast, the first one I was on, and was seeing, like, in his video, he was like leaning back. He looked like he was about to fall asleep. I thought I was being boring. And he was just like, no, my wife took me to the hospital and found out I have diabetes because of that podcast. And I was like, oh shit. Like, that's,
oh, wow.
I mean,
damn,
I also,
that's pretty,
I got my face on a shirt. So I'm like, fuck it. I'm in, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care. I've already accomplished more than enough of what I wanted to do with it.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, and as you know, I lost my mom like a couple months ago. Right. And for me, there was serious debate, like, because I do this, I have a real full-time, full-fledged, like, established career. Like, I don't have to, but I don't want to do that anymore. Right. Like, I have 15 years. So I really thought, like, why am I doing this podcast on the side? And like, at the time I was doing every other day, I was recording a new episode with new people. Like, I was really banging them out, and then when that happened, it all just, like, I just didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't even know if I wanted to keep this thing going. And then a strange thing happened, like a couple weeks after, that stuff happened, is I almost had like this feeling, this urge to continue. Like, I was being told, you need to go, you need to do it, and you need to not let it hiccup, because I just do one release a week right now. Right. And that's simple enough, right?
That's a lot.
I mean, at the time it was for sure. It's a little easier now because I'm not recording like, 4 or 5 people that week and then like trying to space out all those releases. I've pushed that back a little bit. But anyway, long story short is, I found the podcast to be a platform after that happened that I could grieve and people can share that grief with me. And the reactions that I've gotten because of that have once again just fed into this. You got to keep doing this because somebody's getting something out of it, you know? And what's worse than like, you know, losing, you know, somebody really, really close to you, and then kind of putting your heart on your sleeve a little bit and showing the world that you can have one of the most tragic things happen to you in life and things spiral out of control because it felt like all the progress I had been making for months and months and months just completely went to shit, right? But it can show you that you can get that back and then some, you know? And that's what I want to try to show over the next few months, weeks, you know, years or whatever. And it's going to be a roller coaster. Like I'm not like perfect. Like one of my dear friends, you know, and she's been amazing to me. You know, I had a moment yesterday where I like just lost kind of who I am and who she was, you know, and we got in a little bit of a fight, you know, and those things are going to happen. But the important thing is that the people that really, really love and care about you will still be there at the end of those things. You know what I mean? And what's interesting about your story and the guest on your podcast is you hadn't talked to this person in 5 years, right? And he felt that you were the person that he could call in a time where he was literally about to jump. You know what I mean? And that says more about you than anything, right? That says the most without actually saying it, you know, hearing that. And it's the same with her and mine, a relationship. They're like, we didn't talk for a year and a half. And then it was like, you pick it up right where you left off. Those are good people. Those are people that will always be there, even if they're not the best of friends, but will be that acquaintance type of friend that will come around when you need them the most. You know what I mean? And that's, I mean, again, that's a crazy story that somebody called you out of the blue and then, you know, still here, you know, record episodes with you. You know what I mean? That says a lot. And it just goes to show about the power of this form, you know, and people want to do it. They're fun. Everybody I bring on was like, this is so much fun. And it's like, yeah, that's why we do it. Like, it's great to talk about this shit and get your thoughts out there. And, you know, even it, like, sometimes I don't even think I make sense half the time, right?
Right. Then you listen back
that's
on
all right.
Like, oh, it fit together perfectly.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, okay, I get it. Because like sometimes I go in these long tangents where I get back to the point, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody goes, like,
you're talking.
Where's it going with this?
Yeah, you're talking to a person that goes down a conspiracy rabbit hole where I'm yelling about China for like 30 minutes, and then I'm like, how the hell did we get here? Like, and then I just hear, oh yeah, it started because you said, what kind of soda do I like? And I just start going,
exactly.
It's like, what? But I think it's interesting because like there are some episodes I'll record and I'll be like, I don't know if that was a good episode. And then I go, I'm not, because I don't really edit. I just go, just roll it right up.
Me too.
So when I listen to it, I'm like, actually, it was pretty fucking good. Like I'm doing an episode with my buddy and he's doing a bong rip and then he's also eating Ritz crackers, like the dry ass fucking log house cabin cheese crackers.
Oh, those are good actually, man, with the little cheese at the end. And
I like the peanut butter ones, man. You can't hit me with that cheese. But they were so dry. He tried to talk and I'm like, get a drink of water because your breath sounds like ash. And like those were ones where you're like, this sounds terrible. But then when you listen back to it, you're like, oh my God, this is funny as shit. And that's what's important, man, is like, if you're doing something that makes the time go by, makes the day go by easier, makes anything easier, especially, I think there's a lot more good in this world than there is bad. You can probably look back at some of my episodes. I talk about how like a lot of people are just not talking to each other, which is like, the world does seem hurt. But I mean, right after that schizophrenia video, I'm scrolling through Facebook, like, you know, depressed after watching something so horrible. And I'm like, oh my God, like looking through Facebook, you know, checking everybody's posts, making sure everybody's okay. Nobody's like, hey guys, I just failed my job interview, but it's okay. And then they put a tear face and I'm like, you're not okay. You're fishing for help. So I'm going to do what the world does and like the post. And then it seems like you're okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, dude, I'm sorry.
You see
right?
that? You see that? Yeah, I'm good.
At
That's
least I don't.
hilarious.
Me being muted doesn't really seem that bad now. That's why I got mine hanging from the.
See, this is not a permanent setup. Like my permanent setup's going to happen in a couple weeks. And, anyways, long story short, but yeah, that's the plan.
New studio?
So it's like hanging out. It's going to be, it's still going to be in my house, but yeah, it's going to be in a room that's going to be dedicated specifically to recording.
You're going to have the on-air sign and everything?
Everything. Oh, man, I'm going to put it outside the door. I'm going to flip that motherfucker. And then I got backgrounds and shit. So I got a Galaxy background.
That's
because I was like, I don't want to do something static. I want to do something that I can change. So when I get bored of it, I can be like, let me get this other Galaxy type thing, and just stick it up on the background.
I'm recording on this fucking desk I got for Christmas, but it's like a $20 Walmart. It's a nice desk, but it's so like, it feels hollow and it doesn't look hollow. Like my old table, I don't know it's because if it's new, but my old table had 700 conversations soaked into it. I have coffee stains when I used to do the original, like in person. I have coffee stains into them. I have knife stabs from when my buddy was telling me the story about like he's about to have a kid and he's scared because he's can't even handle his own thoughts and he's knifing into my table. And I'm like, there's history in that. So I'm like, I got to get this fucking table weathered in or something, but it's not really work. I got what I think I spilled some soda on the side of it, but that's about fucking it.
So how long have you been doing like this podcast since you've been doing it in some folks in person? How long have you been doing it?
2.5 years now. I mean,
oh wow, okay.
I started it when Brooks called me that night, and then it took him a while to work up the courage to come on, but I was never a daily release guy. I was like a once every week because you're getting people to come to your fucking house. Like I'm asking people on the side of hey man, do you want to do a podcast? Like, I don't even know you. And I would meet people at my door and be like, hey man, let's introduce ourselves on air. And it would go right to that. Cause then we just start rolling.
Wow.
But I mean, it's so much easier doing it through Zoom. You're way more comfortable if you could be in sweatpants or something, not have to go to some stranger's house and shit.
Oh, absolutely. Like so the plan for the studio is I luckily have people that I know locally, especially those that have been on the podcast already, that would absolutely come and do it in person. So that's the other idea for the studio. But if I can, I'm still going to keep doing these Zoom things, because I personally don't have a problem with them, nor does my guest usually. Usually the conversation's just as good, just as fluid. And you get used to how Zoom works and allowing people to kind of finish their thoughts before like fully interrupting and things. And sometimes I have to remember that too. You're like talking and I'll be like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, damn it. No, shut up. Like, you don't want to add that to it. You just want to give that, your time. Right. But yeah, that's the whole idea is I just started this in September, right. During the pandemic. So nobody was going to be coming to my house, right. At all. They're going to be like, yeah, no, especially it was almost at the height still, people were still worried about it. People were claiming people were falling left and right,
It was like, I mean, it was bad timing because Avengers Endgame came out a little bit before. And then it was like, people thought it was going to be like that Thanos snap where half of the population dies. And now everyone's going to
be gone. Yeah.
Everyone's like, fuck it. I'm going to go golfing. I'm like, all right, sounds good, man. See you later.
My buddy Ashton, actually, the latest episode I just dropped, I just finally talked to him and he was in Beijing in January of 2020 when this started to like unfold. And he's like, he talks about it. He's like, we're just going through the city. Nobody's got masks. Nobody knows what's going on necessarily. Right. But little did we know for 2 months it was going on. Right. So like, and he's like, but he was in the epicenter, like just about obviously Wuhan, but he was in China when this all unfolded and got out luckily before it got really, really bad. But yeah, it was like of all places to be, right? So he's actually in Turkey right now, but he's been bouncing all over the place, man. And it was interesting to hear where he's been, how everybody handles the pandemic, how the travel and everything's been going, but to be in China when this thing like started to unfold had to be crazy, like nuts.
It's crazy because we just had, like I was saying, our mask mandates now gone. And I was in the Walmart and I felt like I was going to be shot. Like I felt like probably JFK felt like when he was just getting like that day, like, is someone going to shoot me? Like that's because people were given, and I think this is an issue with the mental thing as well too, is that people are now attached to the fear narrative. They don't want things to change because their life was a lot better when they had the power to be able to tell someone to put a mask on. You know, people love that. We see a lot of them. We call them Karens, and I'm like, look, it's more than just Karens. It's a bunch of people that are definitely should never be cops. Like they're just people that the Stanford prison experiment.
Bro.
The Stanford prison experiment is considered a failed experiment, but it was 100%. I think it did its point, was to show
what
you.
Is it? What is the experiment?
So it was on Netflix like a long time ago, like probably when around the same time my buddy called me before I started the podcast. So basically they take a bunch of people off the street, say you're going to be involved in an experiment. 6 of you are going to be cops and like 8 of you are going to be prisoners. And then what they would do is they'd have different shifts for the cops. So there's probably like a total of maybe 12 cops, but there'd only be 6 on at once. And they're just normal people getting paid to do a trial experiment. And it would show you that when you put these people in a suit and give them a badge and give them a police baton, you start to see the crack of when they start to abuse their power, knowing that they can't hurt these people. Eventually, one dude hit a dude in the leg with a police baton. He's like, hey, what the fuck, man? And he's like, you don't tell him, and punched him in the face. They would rip their beds out from under them in their cells and do all this crazy shit. And you literally got to see the escalation of someone that if you give them the attire, you give them all this position of power, they start to abuse the living shit out of it. Eventually, they made a dude, just random guy, like maybe could have been me. They made him naked and they put him in this little locker and they kept him in there and they called that the hot box or whatever it was. And it was
the
like,
hot box.
You see the dude, that dude had mental issues and he just snapped and he just starts screaming and he starts elbowing everybody in the face and he starts like trying to find a fork to stab somebody, and they had to let him go because he couldn't handle it anymore. And people were starting to leave the experiment, which is why it was considered failed. But I was like, this shows like, people break under tension. You put people in lockdown. Even the CDC, when they retracted all the stuff that they told their governors to do, they ended up pushing the blame on the governors because of the fact of they made the whatever the mandates, all these things worse than the actual thing that they were trying to protect us from. They put us on lockdown and people were killing themselves. My gym that I went for the longest time, they shut down permanently because they couldn't qualify for the pandemic package. They couldn't do any of this stuff and they had to close their business. And I'm like, there are plenty I live in Ocean City, Maryland. So
gotcha. Okay. I was going to ask exactly where.
We're a tourist hotspot. So when we weren't open during summer and we weren't open during all this, we have so many businesses that are just gone, and these people suffered and they're miserable. And a lot of them took their own lives. So I was like, look, if you want to stay locked down, go ahead. But when the CDC backed out of it, because they realized they were fucking up more people's lives than they were saving, they pushed the blame on our mayors. And then everyone just snapped at our mayors. And I'm like, they were just doing what they were being told to do. So now we're in this weird of, I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to say I did this and do this. I just want to know the truth. I want to know where it came from. I want to know how it happened. I want to know how we can get past this. But stop making up bullshit because you need to fill airtime. That's all the fucking news is. If someone gets shot, they don't say a man is dead. They say they say the specific race. They say all these things. And yes, you want to classify it, sure, but it's a human life that's gone, man. If you can't think rationally about that, and you're going to be so pathetic as to point gender or point race or point whatever, religion, politics, any of that over a person's life, then we're not really the human species anymore. We're all the same fucking thing. We all have 2 legs, besides the people that might have 1, but they're still part of the group too. But we're all human beings. We all got a heart. We all got lungs. So
we all got a brain. We're all breathing the same air. It's just everything is about, how do I say sensationalize it all, right? Let's put a race next to it, because doing so will definitely cause an uproar, right? Depending on what that race is, you know. Obviously, there are things in this country that make people go, what the fuck, all the time, right? And just the cops thing that you mentioned. How many cops are good and how many of them are bad? There's a little bit of both for sure. And there is an argument on divided lines that is either one or the other. There's no room in between. There's no such thing as all cops are bad or all cops are good. You know what I mean? Like there's some cops that are good, some that are bad. But damn, if you go look on the news, man, depending on how that day is, cops are terrible. And then if they go and do something like storm the Capitol and they're a hero, and then it's, people are honoring that individual, it's like, oh, now they're great. Where were they when the world was essentially burning in our backyard and in our cities? You know what I mean? Where were those folks then?
It's also how
Where
it
was the
gets
honor?
it also how
You
it gets
know?
shown to you. They had a girl get shot because she was trying to stab another girl with a knife,
I
but
saw that.
the way the video was shown was just the cop shooting the girl and not
Yep.
showing the whole other thing behind that. And a bunch of people started taking to Twitter in arms about it. And then the real video came out and they were like, "Oh shit, like
Yeah.
you already did so much damage that you can't." Yes, maybe he could have found another way, shot her in the foot or something, but in that scenario, you don't know how to act when someone's coming at someone else with a knife. There could be anything that could happen.
They're just naive. People are naive. They think that they know how they would handle a situation that they've never been in. And 9 times out of 10, you don't handle the situation the way you do or the way you think you would, unless you've practiced or you've been trained to be in those situations, right? At the end of the day, that video was a prime example of, like you mentioned, they showed the shooting right as soon as, the trial of George Floyd was pretty much done, right? Was wrapped,
Derek Chauvin.
right? Yeah, Derek Chauvin.
People will get mad if you say George Floyd.
Whatever, the trial for George Floyd, whatever, and it was like you could argue that people were trying to stoke something out of it, right? And then I actually trust Reddit more than I trust most places. I saw the videos on Reddit of people slowing it down, showing the full video before anything on Facebook or Twitter or anything. And you can see like the in full interaction, this young lady, unfortunately, was trying to stab the shit out of another individual, right? And I'm sorry, but that's attempted murder, right? You neutralize that at all costs. Because if you were a homeowner, you know what I mean? And that was your home and somebody was trying to go after your daughter, your family member, and stab them, and the police didn't act accordingly, now the police are also going to be at fault. There was a no win, right? No win for this person. Sure, he maybe could have tased it. What? Again, hindsight's 2020. We don't know in the situation.
It depends on the
right?
cop too. Like people were saying, well, this guy was white and he did mass killings and all they did was taser him. And I'm like, that's a whole different state. That's a whole different thing. That's a whole different cop. You don't know what you're going to do in that situation. If I see any person running at someone with a knife, my first thing to do is either shoot him in the foot or just neutralize it. Like that's not to say that I'm a murderer. It's the fact of they're going after. If I was going at someone with a knife, they're going to shoot me. It's not going to matter my color of my skin. They're going to shoot me in the head.
No, and that's I've seen a female police officer shoot another female suspect that was coming at her with a knife, right? Of course, it didn't blow up because in a lot of cases, it was very much justified. So many warnings given, and yet this person was still, hell-bent on it, right? She got shot. You're trying to go assault a police officer with a deadly weapon legitimately, right? There's no questioning that. Like you're literally on that officer's cam, slicing air, you know what I mean? Trying to get this person, like you're gonna die. Like, and people just have this misconception that every interaction, even the violent ones like this, that there's a way that individual that has really instigated all this violence, by the way, can walk away from it. And yes, there are definitely those. Like, I don't think, the George Floyd situation is a prime example. It should have never got that like that ever, right? But if you are convicted and you're without a reasonable doubt the guy that's committing mass shootings, right? And you're getting basically the treatment, it's kind of odd, man. It really is strange. It's really weird what we decide to deem as like offensive, and then you throw drugs into the matter. Oh my God. Like, I was watching David Chase talk about an episode of The Sopranos, and there's season 1, episode 5 is an episode called College, where in that episode, Tony Soprano basically murders a rat. And that episode was one of basically defined TV after that point. Like Breaking Bad, all these other shows all give credit to The Sopranos and what they were able to do. And that one episode especially was this anti-hero protagonist, Tony Soprano, choking the shit, like violently killing some guy. You know what I mean? Like that. Damn it, what was my point? Where was I getting on it? But
that kind of numbed everyone to killing on TV.
It kind of did. But damn, there was actually a really, really good point that I just kind of went out the window as I was talking about it.
Well,
I think thinking of this scene.
We all know people that probably shouldn't be cops. They get appointed to be cops. Like maybe a dude we went to school with. You're like, that guy's a cop. It's like, oh shit. You know that dude was a little bit off his rocker. But
yeah,
Minneapolis, for example, they completely took away the police thing. They defunded them. And then now they ramped it back up like 200%. They're giving cops bonuses. Same thing in New York. But here's the issue is now listening to interviews and all these things with cops. They go, yeah, they'll call me to something. I'll roll 5 miles an hour all the way there, and then I'll clean up whatever's left. That's their mentality now, is because now they changed the law to where if a cop gets sued, they're not suing the state now. The state has now opened up to the point you can sue the cop personally. So now the cops
civilly
are personally being sued.
Oh, here was the point. It was on the drug thing. Duh. The HBO originally would not allow them to show that scene unless they showed the guy prior to that giving drugs or being a drug dealer, providing a drug habit. Bingo. That is ultimately what that David Chase was saying, is HBO allowed that to happen by plugging in something that wasn't really the original part of it, which was him basically telling 2 junkies, I'm never going to give you another bag again if you don't go try to kill Tony Soprano. But that was our mindset, was like, because they're a drug dealer, it doesn't matter what kind of drugs, he can get whacked and we're okay about it. And it's been a problem with the war on drugs and everything since. That's my point. That was the takeaway. Is it's just funny how we have been the stigma for marijuana, for mental health, all these things just like make some actions and the way people look at things okay. Well, he got killed by the cops. Well, but he was also a drug dealer. Oh, okay. Well, that makes it all right. No, not necessarily. Because guess what? Your pharmacist is a drug dealer too. Yeah. Legally. Like, we have weird lines here. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, the sound's gone, bro. Weird.
Do you hear that when that goes off like that?
Yeah, I do too. I always comment on people. I'm like,
I don't know
do you
why
hear that weird
like that.
lady?
It's never been on that for like the whole entire length of this show until today, unless they updated it last night. No, what I was saying is, I've talked to many people that suffer from like a severe, like I'll give an example. There's a lady that suffers, it's known as the suicide disease, basically because your body starts to do all these things where eventually it leads to something as severe as suicide. But she takes psychedelics, and she's been an advocate of psychedelics and helping them get big. Like she legalized them in Nova Scotia and all those. So I have guests that have these crazy experiences, and like with the amount of drugs that are now becoming legal, it's showing that there's a better way to handle such things like this. There's better forms of medication, because right now we don't know how to cure someone from this to where they never need anything like that. But right now the simple fix is a pill. So I'm like, yeah, I've taken Zoloft. I've taken those for like 2 months, and then I just cut it dry, and no one tells you not to take it. Like no one tells you not to just stop taking it. And it fucked my head up to the point where, like, even when I go to the doctors now, they're like, do you want to do therapy? Do you want this prescription? I'm like, no, I want to deal with my shit. And the way to deal with shit is first thing in the morning at 4 a.m., I work out. Helps me even be able to talk to people, because I can sort out all my problems, all the bullshit, and see what I really need to get to. Prioritizing things. Everyone's got one outlet. If it's video games, if it's hopefully something healthy, like maybe You could eat a veggie shake or something, but I don't care. If you want to eat meat, whatever. But don't sit there and stuff your face because you're bored. But try and
That's
find
right.
an avenue that makes you feel good. Even if it's stepping outside and just drinking a coffee, like just taking that. It feels so fucking good. Like it's intense. And I'm like, people just need to find what that avenue is. We all have one, so you got to find it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of conversations like this and talking to different people is everyone has a different avenue. But one thing's for sure, in the search of finding that avenue, right? You get things from people that may help propel you or may work for you, but then later on, you make it a little bit your own version. You tweak it a little bit. But we are oftentimes like just thrown in a group of black and white, and ones and zeros. Everything about us is so gray. Like it really is, and our days vary, our years vary, our months vary, like all of it varies. And we all need to find what's the right balance for those days. All right, going forward. It could be working out at 4 a.m. or it could be working out at 7 o'clock in the morning because 4 a.m. is just not your thing. You know what I mean? Well, right. So you don't sleep. So, you take advantage of it. Well, some people that love to sleep, that's okay too. Sleep,
All
just
fucking
understand.
day. I know so many people that do that. I'm like, how?
I can't do that either, man. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, and that's just it. Like, I also have the problem where if I'm just like feeling unaccomplished, I just feel like such a piece of shit, all day. I'm just like, what the fuck? I need to go do something. I need to do something that makes me feel like
Make
sitting
your
here is
bed.
worth it. Well, that's just that I make my bed and I'm like, fuck, that ain't enough. Like, what can I do? Or it's like, what can I do for the podcast today? Or what can I do? Should I cut my yard? And what can I do? Do I need to give my dogs a bath? Right. There's always something. But back to the avenue thing. At the end of the day, the avenue is yours to figure out. And the other reality that people don't like to hear is just because a routine works for you now, maybe works for you in a year, may not work for you in 5 years. People oftentimes do get in relationships, have families, all those things, and it changes everything, right? Changes routines, changes
whole dynamic.
Everything. Yeah. And I think it's important that people understand that not every day is going to be perfect. There are going to be days that you're not going to really want to do it. And those days, really, you should. But fuck, man, sometimes you also need to just give yourself a break, and just understand that like we're in a different world now, like a different world. Like everything's comfort, which is nice, right? Everything's comfort and all this stuff. But mentally, it's almost it's not comfort at all. It's almost discomfort mentally. Like I have a hard time laying in bed and doing nothing or sleeping all day when, my mentality is always going to what should I be doing or what could I be doing? But I sleep peacefully when I know, damn, I did a lot today. You know what I mean? Like this day was accomplished. Like I did it, and that works for me. It may not work for other people, but I think that's kind of the key. That's what you're really looking for is when it does feel like that for you, when it feels like the day is satisfied, that's what you should be striving for, how you get there. Shit. I don't know, like you mentioned people like, veggie shakes and meat and shit. I like meat, man, like,
I do
but
too.
I like me some meat, but I don't like sit there and gorge myself on it. Like that there's a whole concept of like overeating and stuff that like has really resonated with me and people, a lot of people around me, or some people that does not resonate. Like you can still enjoy food and you can eat anything. You just don't need to overindulge yourself on it. And if you are feeling like a piece of shit, that's probably because like, I mean, that's,
You don't feel good after like a pasta
you don't
dinner.
feel good. Yeah, no. But if you wake up in the morning and you're, going to go and hit that 4 a.m. workout, like always plan, at the end of that workout, you're going to feel a little less bad about that pasta. But if you never had that workout plan, bro, your ass might not be getting up at all. You might have a sluggish morning. You might wake up, and might be like, let me get this coffee. Why do I feel like shit today? And it's like, well, you feel like shit because you ate like shit the night before. You know what I mean? You didn't do anything about it,
See, on my days off, if I don't have like a recording session going, like tomorrow's my second day off, I don't have anything planned because I do 2-day workouts. And that's just because this becomes an issue too, because if you work in a gym community or you're a part of the bodybuilding community or any of that type of stuff, there's so much body dysmorphia that is littered through there. So many false perspectives. It's horrible. But man, I'll work out, do a 3-hour elliptical thing just to drink a protein shake. Like I'll be like, fucking, it's like, cause I don't eat desserts or sweets. And I'm like, fuck it, work out a little harder. You get a little bit more. But the issue is my biggest concern, at least I've been trying to implement into my work, is trying to make everything more of a comfortable vibe. Because I know what it's like to be overweight. I've worked out every day for 9 years and I have a mental thing when it comes to the gym. It's my one addiction I have. And it's so uncomfortable for so many new people trying to go there that when I see a person that just sits there and flexes or is trying to like slam weights to show off or something, I let them know. I'm like, hey man, like there's other people that are really trying to get their lives on track and you're making it very intimidating. When someone walks in, they're out of shape, they get on the elliptical, 10 minutes in, they hear banging of weights. They see a dude flexing, making them feel bad about themselves. They leave. And I've talked to many people that are like, I just don't feel comfortable. And I'm like, that shouldn't be that way. We should all be working as a community, as people. It's the only way this machine's going to run properly.
That is the other thing. I have the same issue. Like, again, I do Muay Thai. I love it, but just because I don't like doing weightlifting very often. And part of the reason for that is I don't like being watched doing weightlifting or being judged by other people there. And it was a common thing. I remember I would hear people here. We have LA Fitness or MA Fitness, whatever you want to call it for non-legal reasons. Anyways, and I would hear that it was always like a goddamn hierarchy or a class of people that would go to these gyms. And it's like, why do you have to even deal with that? Like, we're all trying to go there and basically be healthy, regardless of at any stage, and Muay Thai for me was like a way of doing the same thing, just less focus on me. But I still would have a complex about getting there, going there, wondering what people who've been doing it longer than me thought. And it's like that always happens with anything you do. There's always going to be somebody that has done it or is better than you, right? And the question you really got to ask is not necessarily is that person that's flexing, should they be doing that? Or is it that this individual needs to, instead of being intimidated necessarily or looking at it as a negative, maybe look at it and says, I want to get there. Let me motivate that should motivate me. Right. And there's all kinds of ways to look at it. Right. I look at it that way. It's like, that should motivate me. And sometimes it doesn't. Right. The mind sometimes just doesn't agree. Yeah. It's just like, I'll never get there is what my mind says, right? Like, fuck it. I'm not, I can't work that hard. I'm not going to do that. And oftentimes that has stopped me from even starting, and I think at the end of the day, it's important that people realize that you're going to have those individuals that are going to be better than you in some way, right? But in Muay Thai, what I've learned, and in martial arts in general, is most times those people that are better than you are also humble about it, right? And that the thoughts that you have in your head about it are 9 times out of 10 the thoughts that you've made up, not really what they're thinking. Like my coaches, I expressed this with my coach. My coach said, no, when I'm looking at you, what I'm looking at is how can I improve your technique? What are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? What are the little adjustments? Because I was there. We all have been you, right? And you think because I'm staring at you and I'm peering at you and I'm like stone faced, poker faced, that something, you're doing something wrong. No, you're not. You're not at all. You got to understand that A, you're here, you're B, doing it, and C, I'm not an effective coach or wouldn't be effective at all if I obviously didn't study you and figure out what you are doing individually wrong, because everybody does it different. The kick's the same, but people do different ways. The kick, sometimes it doesn't come from the body. It comes way out here, but you don't, when you're doing it, you think you're a Ninja Turtle, right? You know, like,
Yeah.
you know, so you're like, oh, I thought I was doing it right. And then they go, no, this is how it should be. Right. And I had to get over that, you know, I had to also get over that some sessions that are going to be really encouraging and real awesome, and you're going to be real sharp. And then there are going to be some sessions where you're going to feel like a dumbass. Right. And the idea is that when those sessions are shitty and they sucked and it feels like your mind wasn't there, is that you go back the next time. Because 9 times out of 10 for me, I would just be like, I don't want to go back. Fuck this. Like when I started doing stand-up comedy before I obviously took a break because of the pandemic, like bombing is one of the worst things that can happen. Like, especially if you're up on stage at 11 o'clock at night on an open mic, you know, and you've been waiting there for 3 hours to just go up there, and that 5 minutes just blows, right? Like it's not fun, you know, but it's part of the process, right? And if every person had the same mentality that I did at that time, which was I want to quit, I want to be done, we'd never have successful comics.
You wouldn't have successful people.
Exactly. And I think that's where what I'm trying to say is, yes, definitely should be more mindful. Like if you are that guy in there flexing and all that, but at the same time, that dude could also, you know, be a buddy, right? Kind of like you were to these other people, and be like, you know, hey man, I see what's going on. I just want you to know that it's awesome that you're doing this. I was you can get to me, you know. That's the more encouragement, you know, community driven thing that I want to see, you know, at a gym, right? Then that dude can flex away, right? But seeing somebody from the outside looking in, that immediate idea or judgment of like, oh my God, you know, it's like intimidating as shit, you know.
This one's like people will hop on your gym equipment right as soon as you get up just to get a drink of water.
God.
And they're like, oh, sorry, bro, got to get my set in. That's the ones I talk to. I'm like, hey, man, he's still fucking on that just because you got to get your gains in, find a different machine.
You can and yeah, that's the thing. When there are people that have been there consistently, and I get they got a routine too, but they also probably have other alternatives or ways or things that they could be doing. And this stealing equipment from people bullshit annoyed the hell out of me all the time, dude. Like, fuck, bro. It's like I just literally walked away to get some water. It's like, sorry, bro. Sorry, man.
Now, if you're in the bathroom taking a shit for 45 minutes, that's mine.
That's a different story, but like I'm on this machine. I got my fucking towel on it. I'm fucking drenched. Like I clearly haven't cleaned this up yet. You know, I got my empty water bottle, you know, is right next to me. I picked that bitch up. I just want to fill it up real quick, right? 10 feet. And a motherfucker had jacked my shit at, you know, I'm not going to mention the name.
10 feet is 10 feet too long.
Yeah. And it's like, dude. And I waited. I didn't wait, really. I mean, I fucking went on and did other shit. But like, dude, it was on it for 10 minutes. It's like, that's the other thing. Like, if it was a quick set, okay, cool. But no, dude, you just jacked my shit and literally like stronged me. Like,
it's even worse when they come by like a shark and they keep staring at you until you get up off the equipment. It's like, oh, all right, I get it. You want how many sets you got, bro? I'm like, I'm gonna go to the bottom of the stack. He's like, oh man. I'm like, how many are you doing of each? I'm like, I'm doing 100 of each.
Or they're sitting down at the end and they're just like sitting on a bench and you're just like,
or they use it for like an excuse. I love that face you make. That's perfect.
You gonna get on yet, bro? Fuck, bro. You know, Bradley. So that's why, like, I stopped going to the gym, dude. I was like, fuck this. You know,
you got to turn that into a bit, dude. That was the best face I've ever seen.
Dude, I'm working on it, man. It's you know, things are gonna be opening up again. I'm, you know, trying to get more comfortable with myself again. You know, podcast helps, but yeah, my biggest problem with comedy, man, is I want to be original. And in the beginning, it's really hard because you think you are being original, and then when the shit comes out, you're just like, I'm pretty sure somebody had said that before, or something like that. But
well, you copy mannerisms off the things you've seen. You just got to make sure you don't stick with it. You got to forge out yourself as well too.
Yeah, well, so obviously everybody's got to figure out what works for them. But 9 times out of 10, like when you're just starting out, you're trying to be like a comic that you're familiar with, right? At first, right? And I think my problem is I would get just too generic to like my bits when really I want to take you on a journey. You know what I mean? I want to take you on a journey. So where by the end of it, you've been kind of mind fucked, but at the same time, you can barely think about it because you're laughing, But yeah, the mannerism is going to happen, bro. It's going to happen.
Well, Bradley, you've given me enough of your time, man. Where can people find your podcast?
So you can actually find my podcast on Apple, Spotify. The main hosting platform is Anchor, and it's called the Panik Attack Podcast. You can find me on Instagram at the Panik Attack Podcast, on Twitter at the Panik Attack, because apparently there's a character limit on Twitter with username, so couldn't put the N there. Anywho, yeah, man, but check it out. And this was awesome, man. And I'd love to do this again. And I'd love to just talk UFOs and conspiracy theories on the next one, honestly.
Till we meet again. That's definitely going to happen, bro. Man. Open invitation, man. I love talking about it.
Thanks, man.
It's happened more. Like I just randomly started asking, like, do you have a UFO experience? And people are like, well, no. But there's this one time. And I'm like, so it's just been so normal, but nobody's ever asked these questions?
I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, sorry, my dog's going. Anyways, yeah. So aliens. Like, he sees the aliens out there. Yeah. Like I personally haven't had an experience. I think I've had more of an experience in like this otherworldly thing going on, like with psychedelics and
next
all that,
episode,
which
put me down where I'm going to be. Well, this is going to come out probably after the 800. So,
okay. That's cool.
We're going to get you back on again to talk about that, because I'm so interested in that. I've heard so many stories. The best one I've heard is from Steve Cantwell when he was on my show. Him taking that salvia trip and then being in a trip for 8 years, which is only 45 seconds in reality, was the best thing I've ever fucking heard.
Dude, I need to listen to that episode. I've heard that recently too, and it's gotten me super interested. But yeah, I'll tell you about my experiences too. They were some profound ones. Definitely, it certainly changes your perspective of life and death, and obviously death especially. So and very, very interesting. I have a whole theory. Like my whole theory is I think we're in a simulation and our bodies are just our avatars.
All right, next time. I'm kind of upset that I didn't ask this stuff, but
it's all right, dude. I got a hard stop at 9 too, but yeah. So but yeah, we will talk about this, because like I said, I think we're in a simulation, and yeah.
Till we meet again.